Jeff Biggs. This is NBC Sports Radio.
Boy, where to begin today? Two kind of big stories going on. First thing I want to say, for those watching on my personal Facebook page, hi, I'm Marky Bilson, your voice of choice for a new generation of Tri-Cities sports fans. The name of the program is Tri-Cities Sports Now. We own the Tri-Cities on AM 1420. That's NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. Because I have the best guests and I am the most outspoken member of the Tri-Cities media. I also probably have as good, if not better, of a historical knowledge of what's gone on around here than anybody, but including the people that have covered them, because I know about it and they've forgotten it. So there you go. Anyway, today's show, I've got a return guest. It's Garrett Brocious from St. Louis. Remember, he is the minor league ball player turned attorney who has been looking to establish higher salaries, better conditions for the minor league baseball player. Now, I realize that a lot of people out there who haven't heard what, perhaps my segment earlier, do not realize that, the Major League Baseball players, Clayton Kershaw, $35 million a year for 6 innings of work every week. Hey, can't beat that, right? But the minor league ball player is the one that really suffers for that. The minor league players, and I was a play-by-play broadcaster in the minor leagues, 2013 Alexandria Aces, Louisiana, admittedly an independent minor league franchise, but I used to handle the payroll. Our highest paid player, he had played first base in the College World Series, made $1,000 a month. Basically, everybody else made $600. I know that there were, the signing bonuses that people, were paid, and so they, live off that and such. Don't get me wrong. There was a lot of, they're being paid less than minimum wage, which one can do on a rather archaic law that says seasonal employees. This is from Great Depression days when people didn't have any money to pay employees. And seasonal entertainment employees, be they minor league baseball players or sword swallowers at the circus, were then allowed to be paid less than minimum wage. It's a rule that goes back to a law that goes back to the 30s. Anyway, Garrett Brocious, the Save America's Pastime Act was passed several weeks ago. However, minor league ball players will get a small increase in salary. But what I want to know is, how is that going to influence the minor leagues? And where does Garrett Brocious go from here? And what about his pending lawsuits? And also, what about the independent minor leagues, which we may not have around here, but frankly, they exploit many minor league ball players. And there's a political system within the independent minors that I find to be extraordinarily distasteful. I mentioned this, and I'm beginning the show on a rant here. But for one thing, the minor league baseball player in, say, the Frontier League, this month they passed a rule that said you could only, if you participated in showcase leagues we don't like, we're not going to sign you to the Frontier League. Well, then how does that become a legitimate development of player talent for affiliated minor leagues? But yeah, they wanted to keep it all in-house and have a monopoly and all that. So a lot of stuff you don't know about minor league baseball that I try to give to light here. I'm talking about this today in large part because the negotiations with the Elizabethton twins are back on with the city of Elizabethton. And oh, they're pounding out the deals over at the barbecue restaurant. See where I say there's a little more mom and pop in the Appalachian League than I'd like? I'll talk about that. Isn't it telling that these negotiations start after Jerome Kitchens resigns, retires, whatever it is? He's not around to be the city manager of Elizabethton anymore. Oh yeah, I'm sure that's just coincidental. Sure. I'll talk about that in the next segment. We got some Vols news here, NFL news. I've got Donald Trump news if I get to it here. But, Colin Kaepernick news. I mean, yeah, that's always good. Speaking of, I guess labor is going to be a topic of conversation here. Is the NCAA slavery? We've heard this again. It's not, but there's comments that the mother of a Duke star recently compared the NCAA to slavery. That's actually really offensive. I mean, you talk about what's offensive when not. Washington Redskins are offensive, really? What about comparing a free college education, all the glory, all the women, all the prestige of being a college basketball player at Duke, getting your Duke education scot-free, and that's slavery? Now, I am not one that necessarily says don't pay the players, but it's, to try to maintain that the college athlete is a slave today. No. Eric Cartman was wrong on South Park, okay? So we'll look at that. But I want to start off the show, as if I haven't, by going on with a variety of topics. I want to ask this, and it's a conversation that everybody seems to has. I'm not a big NBA guy. I'm going to tell you why here in just a sec. Is King James better than MJ? All right, that's the old argument, isn't it? Right there. I mean, that's will Tennessee football ever be great again and win a national championship or even an SEC title? That's should we do away with the DH or make it universal? That's, that's that argument. Who's better, MJ or LeBron? Well, LeBron James has a better nickname, King James. He's never lost in the first round of the playoffs, and even though he's a forward, LeBron James actually has a higher lifetime three-point shooting percentage than Michael Jordan, which kind of tells you how the game is evolving. But in today's greatest of all time debates, numbers are so often de-emphasized or even totally ignored, despite the very name of the title. Greatest of all time, GOAT, speaks of an implied equality with participants of historical eras to today. Greatest of all time gives a legitimacy, if you will, to, say, George Mikan or Bob Cousy, that otherwise they may not have, because you have to consider them for all time. So at that point, greatest of all time becomes a generational debate. So arguing about LeBron James and MJ may reveal as much about NBA culture as anything else. Greatest of all time actually becomes the greatest of the last quarter century or so, because who cares about anything before that? This is why I say, folks, children of the 80s, you and I, we've got to unite here, forget about it. Wilt Chamberlain, 61-62, scores more than 50 points a game, averages more than 48 minutes a game, 48.5 to be precise. Well, I mean, that's, you can't argue that. That's the pitcher that wins 30 games. That's the undefeated and unscored upon college football team of the past. And I could even make the argument that Michael Jordan's shot to beat Georgetown back in 1982, boy, that is 36 years ago, in the NCAA finals, that changed the perception of the North Carolina Tar Heels and Dean Smith, because before that shot, North Carolina was the program that couldn't win the big one. Well, that's just considered archaic. In fact, if I want to say, well, that proves, hey, LeBron James never had a shot that won the, he never had a shot that won the NCAA tournament. Well, the LeBron James fan is going to say, you know what LeBron James did when he was 19? He was already in the NBA. He didn't have to mess around with college. He was already scoring more than 20 points a game. He was already doubling Cleveland's victory total from the previous season. And Jordan never even averaged as many points as LeBron James did his rookie year when Michael Jordan was a North Carolina Tar Heel. But a year ago, and I've got it up on our Facebook page, our 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities Facebook page, on Colin Cowherd's show, Rob Parker spoke of the influence the two men, Michael Jordan and LeBron James, had on pro basketball. James' impact, Parker argued, had been detrimental to basketball. And again, go to the 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities Facebook page and watch what Rob Parker has to say. We aired it a year ago here on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities when he was saying it. Now, this could be, for instance, the fourth year Golden State and Cleveland meet in the finals. That's boring. Another thing, even in his final season in the NBA, Michael Jordan played in all 82 games. He was Cal Ripken, so to speak. James sits out games like a catcher in a Sunday day game after a Saturday night game. The very practice of showing up for work every day has been shattered in NBA culture, first by Greg Popovich, and then verified, if you will, by LeBron James. Now, you see why I'm not the biggest NBA fan in the world here? Now, what James has done, in my opinion, is diminish the idea of championships making the player. Like it is in the NFL. Who's the greatest quarterback of all time? Right now, consensus says Tom Brady. He doesn't have the best stats, but he has the most Super Bowls. LeBron James, though, by diminishing the idea of championships making the player, has, at times, just to give you this example, abandoned his hometown franchise to play on a stacked team in order to win a title. So in essence, he was making the move that said the title is important. The title is what makes the player, when he left the Cavaliers in free agency for Miami in 2010, the decision. But in doing so, it really diminished the importance of championships. Here's how. At least to the individual player. The star of the sport, LeBron James, essentially diminished what it meant for a basketball player to win a championship. How prestigious is a title won by an individual player if he's merely joining an established winner? Anybody can sign with somebody on a free agent. So in doing so, James became a product of the times. He took advantage of the NBA's market the star approach and a fantasy sports culture that really promotes the individual over the team, if you will, certainly when you're playing fantasy sports. And the fact of the matter is, James may be bigger now than any franchise in the NBA. Give you a case in point. James has 23 million followers on Facebook. The most followed NBA team, which, by the way, is the most followed team on Facebook in North American sports, is the Los Angeles Lakers, 21 million followers. So LeBron James actually has 2 million more followers than the most popular NBA team on Facebook. But if that's the case, then to really be the greatest of all time, LeBron James, he needs to establish himself with the individual career records, such as most points scored in a career, that define individual greatness. So that's the way you look at MJ versus, LeBron James. Admittedly, it's not my favorite debate because, as I said, I am not the biggest pro basketball fan. I do think that James is more polarizing than MJ. I think this is why he does fewer endorsements, if you will. Because, LeBron James has not shied away from being political. But one of the things that Michael Jordan always recognized was that if I became political, and I will say that during his first retirement, he actually did endorse Bill Bradley for president, but that's as political as MJ got, and it was after his career. It's before his Wizards career, but it was after his Bulls career. Anyway, point being, Michael Jordan stayed away from that because, when you become political, you do alienate half the audience. And frankly, the NBA has gotten political a long time ago, and it's alienated me. But everyone's talking MJ versus LeBron? Well, that's the case right there. That's my take. Greatest of all time? LeBron has established the individual, made it bigger than the team in pro basketball. And so if he's going to be the greatest of all time, he's got to have the greatest records, career-wise, of all time. I'm Marky Bilson, Elizabeth and Twins. They might stay after all. Tell you about it after this on Tri-City Sports Now.